There you see what happens. Sometimes seeing it tells the story better than all the stories we've done in the past about terrorism.
Appears to be unaffected. This appears
No, there is an explosion.
The explosion is incredible!
Both buildings copy have a large...
You can actually see on the doors of the...
Saying from Aldgate, reiterating what we're not...
Was one of those that had to be evacuated.
No, that's the problem. That's why they're having...
Power being supplied to the voltage.
When terror struck Mumbai on Wednesday night, these were the men who struck back. At both the Oberoi and the Taj hotels, the police were the first to arrive.
So many of the victims were children.
3:26 p.m. A massive car bomb shatters downtown Oslo. The target, the Prime Minister's office. The streets turn into makeshift triage areas.
War against terrorism, that it is easy to prevent terrorism, but it is very difficult to fight terrorism.
Bring our next generation back from the isolation model and integrate them with the mainstream system.
Right at the moment to transform the mindsets of the beneficiaries.
So prevention is the best cure. So the way to prevent infection of a community with terrorist ideas.
So their stepping stone to community engagement has been rehabilitation.
Trying to understand and to develop a dialogue will be the second and important steps.
It needs the cooperation of all stakeholders. It needs the whole nation to contribute toward stopping recruitment, stopping violence, stopping insurgency.
gentlemen, please rise and put your hands together to welcome our guest of honor, Singapore's Deputy Prime Minister, Mr. Teo Chee Hean, accompanied by the Lead Correspondent, Mr. Mary Thompson.
Countering ideological extremism and its vicious byproduct terrorism involves prevention of extremism upstream and de-radicalization of extremists downstream. While rehabilitation to de-radicalize terrorist inmates and detainees is gathering momentum worldwide, we need to develop the tools to engage communities to counter extremism and build community resilience. Delivering the welcome speech, Ambassador Barry Desker, Dean of S. Rajaratnam School of International Studies, emphasized the importance of using smart power, combining hard and soft approaches to counter extremism.
I'm delighted to see such a group of distinguished persons from Jordan to Saudi Arabia, from Pakistan to Malaysia, attending this conference. You have contributed enormously and are committed towards building social resilience through research, education, and outreach. In our effort to pursue excellence in the field of threat research, we felt that the time had come for us to be more focused on the soft approach. To counter the increasing threat of terrorism arising from extremism, the most effective approach in our view is community engagement. More than ever before, we are committed towards building global capacity to deliver community engagement programs to counter extremism and build social resilience.
The threats posed by the extremists to the world and the successful community engagement program adopted in 2006 by Singapore was the highlight of the chief guest, His Excellency Mr. Teo Chee Hean, the Deputy Prime Minister, Coordinating Minister for National Security and Minister for Home Affairs, Singapore.
This program brings together stakeholders across the sweep of our society and encourages them to co-create a vision of Singaporean society which is resilient against terrorism and other external threats. It then challenges them to bring this vision to fruition at the local level by putting in place actionable response plans and by being individually prepared. Let me give you one concrete example of how the program has worked on the ground. The Geylang Serai area in Singapore has the largest concentration of racial and religious organizations in Singapore. It's a very small area, several streets parallel to each other. There are some 120 religious institutions, clan associations, and civic organizations in this Geylang Serai constituency. It was also one of the places involved in the 1964 racial riots. But over time, the various parties have learned to live in harmony with each other, build trust and confidence in each other, learn how to share and live together with each other. Since the CDP was launched, the Member of Parliament for the area, Associate Professor Fatima Latif, who is here with us today, has harnessed the positive conflict resolution experiences of the past and shared them with the new generation of Geylang residents. This has made them appreciate much better the importance of give and take and of finding win-win solutions. One positive example of how this has strengthened the community is when a fire broke out in February this year at Chongput Lim Association, which is a Buddhist temple housed within a shophouse unit in Lorong 25A, Geylang. As a result, this temple, as well as the Coronation Baptist Church, which was located just next to it, became structurally unstable. Upon learning that the church would be unable to conduct its service session, Professor Latif discussed the issue with the temple management, who agreed to share its newly acquired activity center nearby to temporarily allow the church to continue conducting service sessions. But as it turned out, the church was able to find its own space, but the important thing is the spirit of help, sharing, and dealing with a common problem together is inspiring.
This international conference on community engagement was organized by the International Center for Political Violence and Terrorism Research, a specialist center of the S. Rajaratnam School of International Studies at the Nanyang Technological University in Singapore.
During this period, the Tier 1 national security threat globally is from terrorism and extremism. Terrorism is a vicious byproduct of ideological extremism. So one of the strategies to prevent terrorism is to prevent extremism. Extremist ideologies take root among ethnic and religious groups because terrorist groups are specifically targeting those vulnerable segments of those communities. And both community leaders and government leaders must build a partnership to work together with communities to protect those communities, to immunize those communities from extremist ideologies. If you don't protect those communities from extremist ideologies, then those communities will be harmed because those members of those communities will become susceptible and vulnerable to extremist thought, and they will become extremists, and with heightening extremism they will become terrorists. So prevention is the best cure. So the way to prevent infection of a community with terrorist ideas, or what you call the extremist virus, is to proactively for governments and community leaders and community institutions to work with their community organizations.
In a country like Switzerland, where at least Muslim population represents about 10% of the total population, I would say that in a country where basically we already deal with 3 national languages, let's say 3 and 4 because there's a 4th that is less known, but 4 national languages, community engagement would consider into 2 things. First of all would be knowing each other. Because if we already have from time to time problems knowing each other as Swiss citizens, we even have to go even further when it comes to foreign communities. So the first step would be try to know who you are living with. And this is what we've tried to do in the last couple of years. And the second point would be speaking together. If you already have 4 national languages, depending on the people and depending on where they are, the questions will be how do you communicate with them, knowing that they are of course speaking another language, which might be Arabic, which might be depending on the place they're coming from, Serbo-Croatian. So trying to understand and to develop a dialogue will be the second and important steps in Switzerland. And to preview the next questions, this is in that direction that we have tried to work in the last couple of years in my country.
We're involved in some real pioneering partnership work with Muslim communities. You know, at the time, let's say, look at 2005, we had real problems in London with violent extremists, with supporters of Al-Qaeda, with Al-Qaeda propagandists, individuals like Abu Hamza. So yes, I think there is some really interesting work that we've done in London. Probably I would describe it as being work at the sharp end. On occasions, work that police will get involved in with Muslim communities is very much to do with countering violence. Therefore, there's often a very good and close partnership between police and communities that actually can tackle the spread of Al-Qaeda influence in communities.
Sri Lanka needed mediation boards to be set up in all over the island because there was a clogged up of cases in the court system and we needed to release that. As a community builder was to go around the country and install mediation boards and also train the grassroots level leaders in mediation. So during this training what I noticed was there was a great transformation because mediation allows people to sit down and speak. It allows that space for people to talk about their issues, and by doing that they automatically turn to think from the other's perspective, which makes them come into amicable settlements which is quite sustainable.
We try to develop two kind of the programs. It's a digital campaign and also a conventional campaign. Through digital campaign, we develop a website and also through Facebook, Twitter, and also TV programs. And through conventional campaign, we develop a seminar, symposium, workshop, and many kinds of program which dissemination and propagating our programs.
But unfortunately, Pakistan has no clear policy or community engagement model right now. Yeah, they tried the military hard power line to get rid of extremism and terrorism. And as you know, Pakistan has been on front line on behalf of United States against the terrorism, Taliban and Al-Qaeda. So other than that, the community model, I haven't seen yet in Pakistan. The challenges main there is basically, I would say, the education system, because in my opinion, the extremism come from the education system from the beginning. And then again it comes from the misinterpretation of the Holy Scripture, which is Quran in Pakistan mainly. And to deal with it, the challenges right now is the dual education system running in Pakistan. Like the 50% of the students, they go to the madrasas, which are completely the religious and Islamic education centers, where they are not taught any single secular education, sciences or mathematics or physics, chemistry. They are not taught anything like that. So they only learn in fiqh, hadith, tafsir, the really Islamic sciences. And on the other hand, half of the nation, they go to the secular education centers, where actually they are not getting enough in the learning and education in the Islamic and religious sciences. So I would say this is a major reason, like when the 60% or 50% of some nation goes to such institution where they only get a sectarianism and a narrow-mindedness in religion and very big amount of isolation they get from it. So what kind of a future you can see of that nation or country? So first, in the beginning, we have to work out on this subject, that we could bring our next generation back from the isolation model and integrate them with the mainstream system.
To learn from global best practices, ICCE 2011 brought together leaders in the field of community engagement. This two-day international conference included more than 20 internationally renowned speakers from countries with community engagement programs or programs that aim to counter extremism through various mediums of engagement with the community.
We launched a new military strategy. It's called the Internal Peace and Security Plan Bayanihan. Bayanihan is a Filipino word for cooperation, for collaboration. We are saying that the military alone cannot stop extremism or insurgency. It needs the cooperation of all stakeholders. It needs the whole nation to contribute toward stopping recruitment, stopping violence, stopping insurgency. So what we did is that we deploy peace and development teams in areas where insurgency or extremism are present. So the objective of these peace and development teams is to be able to change the perception of the people or the adherents or sympathizers of insurgents or extremists. We are gaining grounds right now. In fact, the insurgents are now talking peace with us, and we hope that in 2 or 3 years' time we have a peace agreement with the insurgents.
We have some models, like we deal with pesantren communities. You know that the pesantren are really populous in Indonesia. As you know, the pesantren is related to a major Islamic organization, usually under NU, Nahdlatul Ulama, which members more than 50 million members. So pesantren are very important to engage with and to cooperate with so far. The other one is we also deal with the youth with multi-faiths, which is with the 6 major religions in Indonesia. So with Islam, Christianity, Catholicism, Buddhism, Hinduism, and Confucianism. So 6 major religions. Together with their youth, we work together. This is what we have done so far.
We have a combined program that we do undertake nationwide for de-radicalization, for counter-radicalization, for counter-extremism, and so on, so that we can keep our country free from extremists. And the main programs that we have engagement of the community through the imams and madrasa teachers. We have our media engaged to tell the people that we should keep our country free from the extremists, and they also propagate about the bad aspects of extremism and the negative things what all can happen for a country like Bangladesh. We have our social workers employed by the government and also by the non-government organizations, so that they can go to the remote places, can talk to the people, and can motivate the people not to join the extremists. We have our seminars, dialogues that we regularly hold. We have our eminent scholars who go to the television and participate in the talk shows, and that's how actually we could give message to the people that we should do something so that our country remains free from extremism and terrorism as we are now.
Community engagement programs in India are several. They are tried by individual officers. They are spread all over the country in every possible state. But the most effective community engagement has been in solving communal problems, in diffusing communal tension, and there the community engagement has been most successful.
Sri Lanka presents a unique model of community engagement which is almost linked to rehabilitation. So their stepping stone to community engagement has been rehabilitation, because having a group of over 10,000 cadre population to be rehabilitated wasn't an easy task. And I don't think that there's any civilian body that was in Sri Lanka except the army who have been trained to take up on this colossal, massive task of rehabilitation. And I think we have finished the war. War is over. It is not time for revisiting history anymore, but to look forward to a future where we can engage with communities, especially the ones who have been in the war-torn areas, where the majority-minority clashes have been in the country over the last 30 years. Therefore, it is imperative and paramount that all of us come together to understand community role. It is not a question that the majority and minority they must continue to debate on issues, but that doesn't mean that they go into war continuously. Therefore, an opportune time has arisen for both for the government, the state of Sri Lanka, the people of Sri Lanka, both people in the north and the south, to come together in this very important task of nation building. And the only way that we could do that is through community engagement.
In Britain, trying to sort of fund community initiatives in order to reduce terrorism. I think the Prevent agenda has had some astonishing sort of examples of success. I think it has helped to build relationships within and between communities. And I think there are some very important lessons that have been learned along the way. I would add, however, that the Prevent agenda, we need to see this in a broader context of counter-terrorism policy, and there is a danger that sort of harder-edged counter-terrorism strategies continue to be used, which then place particular challenges on the community engagement-based initiatives that you would find within Prevent.
The future of counter-terrorism and community engagement in the Netherlands. Well, what we've seen is that, of course, since right now the threat level is almost reduced, at least the national threat level is reduced very much. The community engagement now focuses very much on capacity building and making sure that those communities and civil society organizations on the municipal and regional level are self-sufficient. In the sense that there shouldn't be too much central authority and direction by the government anymore, but it should be the local municipalities arranging these kind of programs. And overall, it's just making sure that this society is resilient. You cannot, how much you try, you cannot fully eradicate the threat of terrorism. So what you then want to try to do is, on the one hand, have such a high level of community engagement to make sure that your community is able to identify and prevent processes of violent radicalization, but also to make sure that they're resilient enough that when, unfortunately enough, when a terrorist attack does take place, that they're resilient enough to take up life and move forward. And I think that's where we're going, what we're going towards, what we're going for.
The exchange of ideas through discussions and questions posed after each session was a value addition to the expert presentations. As a result of country-specific issues being looked at by several different experts of numerous nationalities, the answers and suggestions voiced were enriched with unique perspectives.
When we talk about community engagement, this is a very vital tool and important aspect in countering terrorism. Because if we don't have a good preventive methods or preventive so-called operation, we will not be able to counter these atrocities. Okay, community engagement involves collaborative effort between agencies concerned in Malaysia. It involves prison department. It involves Royal Malaysia Police. It involves several other departments and other agencies because these efforts are blended together to make it a perfect one. So if we have a good program with detainees and ex-detainees, plus program with their families and other members of society, we could at least reduce this fire of such thoughts.
In the context of Australia, I think we've had to learn probably some hard lessons over the past decade or so. Although we had a very multicultural society, we really didn't tackle probably ideological issues terribly well. Previously, our counter-terrorism legislation concentrated on subversiveness rather than ideological issues. So I think we've had a lot of fairly steep learning curve in Australia. But we may do it reasonably well in an informal manner. I think we've engaged with communities reasonably well, but I think there's still a lot of learning to be done.
In the U.S., I would say the biggest one right now is the political atmosphere, which is very divisive. It makes it difficult really to accomplish anything that's in least controversial in the context of government. And the result has been that I think there's a sensitivity to, an oversensitivity to political criticisms of government efforts to reach out to the Muslim community in particular. And I think also there's tends to be an overemphasis on the Muslim community at the exclusion of other kinds of forces for radicalization that might crop up in the United States. And that creates an atmosphere where the Muslim community feels singled out and victimized and suspect. And we've got to move the pendulum back into the middle to re-engage and rebuild trust.
هي حقيقة الطريق إلى الحل. الإرهاب لم يأتي من فراغ. الإرهاب خرج من داخل المجتمع، فهذا الإرهابي هو فرد في المجتمع. فإذا حاولنا أن نحصن المجتمع ونحمي المجتمع، النساء والرجال الكبار والصغار والأطفال، وقتها نستطيع أن نحمي مجتمعنا وبلادنا من الإرهاب. لابد من العناية بالتعليم، المناهج التعليمية، العناية بالمساجد، العناية بدور العبادة الأخرى، حتى ثقافة الشارع لابد من العناية بها، الإعلام، وسائل الإعلام بتنوعها سواء كانت الوسائل المسموعة أو المقروءة، هذه لابد العناية بها ونقلها نقلة وسطية معتدلة، وأن تخاطب الناس بما يفهمون وتخاطب الناس بوسطية واعتدال.
Well, there are NGOs, a lot of NGOs working towards helping the needy people, needy children, education, but there's still a lot need to be done because it's a huge country, almost about 185 million people, and there are not much resources coming from the private sector or from the NGOs. So government doesn't have much revenues also. They are running short of their own budget. So there are serious problems, dropout from the college, from the schools. The demands are more. There are so many people are, like special children, people drop at the door, You can't look after the children, all the children. So there are like short of facilities available to look after all the needy people.
I mean, there are different strategies, I suppose, for community level engagement. I mean, one could look at, we have a policy framework called community cohesion in the UK. More recently, because of the focus on security and counterterrorism, we've had the preventing violent extremism agenda, which is part of our counterterrorism strategy. This strand of our counterterrorism strategy has sought to engage specifically Muslim communities in a pursuit to prevent violent radicalization of particularly young Muslims.
Extremism is a phenomenon that threatens our common humanity and constantly challenges our potential to develop and progress. It is anarchy to the most basic human values that we must not only uphold but protect and promote. Respect and dignity. This is where sports plays a key role. Throughout my career in football as president of both the Jordan Football Association and the West Asian Football Federation, I witnessed firsthand the power of this beautiful sport in engaging our youth, empowering local communities and developing pride on the individual and national levels. This is the essence of building community resilience. Sports in general, and football in particular, has the potential to transform lives, especially if introduced and promoted at the grassroots level amongst our youth, which in turn represents the majority of our population in Asia.
هي عبارة عن إجراءات عديدة، منها ما يتعلق بقوانين العقوبات، قانون العقوبات الأردني، حيث تم إجراء تعديل على هذا القانون وبإضافة مجموعة من المواد التي تتناول الإرهاب وتوصيفه والعقوبات التي يمكن أن تقع على الذي يثبت عليه هذا الأمر. وهذه الإضافات على قانون العقوبات الأردني لا يتأثر بها قانون الحريات الأردني. إضافة إلى أن الحكومة الأردنية يعني قامت بعقد مجموعة من الاتفاقيات الدولية في هذا المجال وحول كل ما يمكن أن يؤدي إلى الإرهاب، اتفاقيات حول مسألة المخدرات وإدخال السلاح ودخول الأشخاص غير المرغوب فيهم المشبوهين وإلى غير ذلك من مثل هذه القوانين التي تحارب وتحد من الإرهاب.
My country is engaged in numerous community engagement programs as part of strategies to counter violent extremism. But my work is primarily focused on the state of Victoria within the country of Australia. Victoria is a leader in the field of building community resilience and building partnerships between culturally and religiously diverse communities and state actors, and also the media and academics. These relationships we've called multi-actor peace-building networks, and they are used to counter underlying causes of radical extremism and to also hopefully counter processes of alienation in the broader community by advancing peace-building principles and also the principles of multiculturalism.
This conference was an ideal platform to provide a better understanding of the process and the necessity of community engagement. It drew from global best practices to create a working model, guidelines that will assist government and other public institutions to put in place community engagement efforts in their home countries. It also provided a crucial networking point for the governments and institutions actively involved in community engagement.
So what we are suggesting here, Ajuquran International is doing by making schools where the Islamic education and the modern education, we are bringing them together. And so that the whole nation is coming out of the same institution up till some level, and then they are very much easily integrated into the mainstream and academic area. So what I would say is so we need to run a very severe campaign in the universities, colleges, and in the youngsters and next generation of the country, and that campaign should to make their conscience alive and to make them understand that what they have lost, what respect and dignity and sovereignty they have lost, and how to get rid of those corrupt political system and institution and develop the new one.
Community engagement does not take place in a vacuum, and we need to understand the broader social context within which that engagement takes place. And if the context is perhaps one of creating suspect communities through too much of a focus on hard-ended approaches, then the community engagement approach won't be as successful as it could be.
We are very hopeful that this will be very effective in the coming days also, because we have already started getting the good result of community engagement, and this is once again proved in the context of Bangladesh that when you have popular support you can do everything. So we have always given this important consideration before we embarked on the war against terrorism, that it is easy to prevent terrorism, but it is very difficult to fight terrorism. So that's what we want to do. We want to prevent it so that we don't have to fight.
In terms of Sri Lanka, I think it's really important that we have a holistic, integrated community building system. That means a system which would inculcate conflict transformation, trauma healing, restorative justice, development, and also leadership training, especially for the next generation, the youngsters.
And I believe this opportunity, this first international conference on community engagement is, I believe, an opportune moment for all of us who have gathered here to understand and to go beyond these little things that we have created in the past.
Globally, community engagement is not a well-developed strategy as yet. There are a few ad hoc programs, but it is so imperative for governments and community leaders, community organizations, community elite to come together to build robust community engagement programs to counter extremism and terrorism. This is today not only valuable to keep communities safe, but it is a global imperative. It is because terrorists are specifically targeting communities, and the only way to protect your community is to invest in those communities so that communities do not become the resource base of the terrorists.